there is a deliberate link between the first reading and the Gospel. We notice how the Lord listens to those who are truly humble, authentic, and sincere. This comes through also in the Psalm. Here, in the book of Ecclesiasticus, we have a number of references to the way in which the sincere prayer reaches and pierces the heavens. He does not ignore the orphan's supplication. So here we have immediately those who are most vulnerable in society. The widow comes next. And then the man who with his whole heart serves God will be accepted. The Lord sees who is sincere. The Lord is not easily fooled. We can put on a great show, we can produce great music, we can even produce spectacular liturgy, but if the heart is not pure, if there is not sincerity, then we're not going to get through. The word sincerity comes from the Latin sine cera, without wax. It was to be found on the bottom of pots made in the south of Italy, indicating that the composition was authentic. The Lord doesn't like any kind of padding which is not sincere. And so, let us remember how this has always been perceived by the Christian centuries. The story is told of how a monk had a beautiful voice way back in the time of the Desert Fathers, and he knew it. Of course, he was useful in the liturgy. It embalmed the liturgy with great tonality, but it was given to another monk to see something that the others hadn't noticed. It was, at the end of the monastic church, there was a demon, and he was grinning, and he was beating time as the glorious singer chanted unto himself. Monks have sometimes had intuitions during the celebration of the divine office. One monk, it may have been St. Bernard of Clairvaux, was given to see how, when the monks were chanting, the angels had something to offer and to take up in their prayer. But in the case of others who were absent from their chant, that is to say, present only with the voice, they had very little to take up, in fact nothing at all. Others in the same act were engaged heart and mind, and so the praise was total and pierced the heavens. He also was given to understand that at certain points of the liturgy, the total attention of the person was required by Almighty God. We know that the Blessed Trinity is honoured particularly by the doxology at the end of the psalm. There is a profound bow. The whole body is engaged. But that would be a moment, whatever's happened during the psalm, of coming back to base in a big way. But also he was given to understand that there were certain points like the Te Deum, the great hymn of praise, going back centuries, possibly to St. Ambrose and St. Augustine, that is to be sung with the whole person fully engaged, because at that point heaven is particularly linked with earth. It invokes the angelic choirs, and it is something which reproduces their holy, holy, holy. And so it is something which is very much a quintessence of praise, especially at the hours of night, when during vigils it is sung on behalf of the sleeping world and church. These are points in which the monk is fully in harmony with the angels that are there right next to him. In conspectu angelorum psalam tibi Deus meus, in the sight of the angels I will sing psalms to you, O my God. at La Trappe, we had angels' wings carved on the choir stalls over our heads and at our sides, reminding us that we were on earth reproducing the chant of the angels in heaven, but also right next to us. They were encouraging us to sing well on behalf of the church. So liturgy is not banal. It is man in angelic mode here on earth. And so his praise is always on our lips, as the psalm suggests. Let it then be praise which is fully engaged praise, not just a flatus vocis, a breath of air in which the mind is not engaged and the heart does not hover. So, the humble man's prayer pierces the clouds. We have the insistence that comes forth in the gospel of the unjust judge who is pestered by this woman. The insistence of the woman actually has the victory. He yields. And so it has its effect, that insistent pressing and pushing, because the Lord is, as it were, sitting up when he sees that we are really pulling hard. If we're not interested in our prayer, why should he be? We presume too much when we think we have prayed a lot by a high-speed rosary in which you were totally absent. Let us, if we're doing anything at all, do it with heart and mind. The rosary, well prayed, fully engaged, is hugely powerful. At high speed, in which we're not present, one can ask the question, would perhaps another way of approaching our Blessed Lady be more pleasing to her than just another rosary thrown at her at high speed without anything meant or felt? It's important because these are sins that we, the pious, commit. We're very good at certain sins, as was the Pharisee in the Gospel. It's the sin of a professional. Professionals have their own field of sinning, and this can be ours. Badly said prayer. Prayer which is nothing more than automatism. It's not something that we need to look over, because actually it could be more an issue than we think. Protestants actually are not slow to pick it up. They are scandalized by the speed at which sometimes we approach heaven. It's true that many of them would not have the structure of set prayer that we have, but what they do have, they seem to have. That is to say, if they haven't got set prayers, they will perhaps say fewer prayers, but they will mean them. In the renewal of prayer since the Second Vatican Council and in the movement of charismatic prayer in general, we have had something of that coming in. We have had this element of revivified prayer, and it is something the Spirit would have us listen to. He is saying that to the churches. He was trying to have us to get our act together with regard to seeing what prayer actually is, because there had been a lot of that around, remember. Speed was the norm for a long time. So let us be careful, otherwise we will not reap the fruits of renewal. So what have we here? We have in the Gospel this strange scene in which a very pious man is a man very much aware of his piety. It's almost amusing, actually. He thanks God, apparently, although the Gospel does say that he's praying within himself, or maybe even to himself, that he's not like other men. And then he hardly looks over, but suggests, or even like this person here. And so, that person there is nothing. This publican, it's a word he can hardly pronounce. Are we perhaps in our mind something like that? It could be, oh, that's a traveller. Oh, that's black man. Oh, that's whatever it might be. We have put a label. We have classed. We have, as it were, put in category B. Well, the Gospel indicates that category B was actually A+ compared with category A++ that this man thought he was in. it's kind of important not to presume too much when it comes to Almighty God, and to enter also into His vision of souls, to realize that if we had something of the heart of Christ, we would not at all see a category. We would see an eternity. We would see an immortal jewel, a gem, somebody that Christ died for and loved into being. We have in the passage where Lord answers this young man that comes to him, it just says simply, he looked at him and loved him. Agapizen, one word in Greek. It contains it all. We too must have that regard of love that loves that person into being and sees its potentiality. That potentiality is seen in the farewell of St. Paul to his protégé, Timothy. It is fairly late, this writing here. He's already in captivity. The instructions for getting this and that, different objects that he needs. He is left alone in his defense. However, Luke is with him, we notice. We do see how the Lord has stood by him and given him courage and indeed words. But here we have this willingness to go. There is something of the tent maker perhaps coming in here. He was a tent maker, but this element of pitching one's tent and taking it up again might be familiar to him at this point. There are several images coming in. The libation, this pouring out of things in a ritual way, this athletic combat, this race, the laurel, this wreath given to athletes when they were victorious. This is what is awaiting him because he knows he's done his best. He has really fought. He has used his energies for Christ. Can we say the same thing? If we were to die today, would we actually be ready to go? Or have we unfinished business? Let us ask for this grace to realize that the Lord wants sincerity in prayer and availability in service. For we only have one race. There is no dress rehearsal or practice. This is the real thing.